We've been living here in Milwaukee in an apartment building called the Boston Lofts, which was originally part of the Boston store, the Bonton Corporation, and then the top floors got sold to a local developer who turned it into luxury apartments. We're actually leaving soon because the luxury apartments long ceased being luxury as a new company bought out this place. That's a whole other story there. But I'm going to tell you about a dog that I met and had some interesting interactions with while I was here, along with their owners who lived right next door to us. And sometimes we could hear their music or the other things that they were doing, and I'm sure, vice versa. So his name was Atlas. And while we had our dogs, Amika and Magnus, who we moved here with, when they were still alive, I never really got to know Atlas because I think it was, so Amika was our girl dog and she was bigger, and Magnus was a bit smaller. They were both black lab mixes. Magnus with flat coat retriever and Amika with Catahoula leopard hound and maybe some pit bull as well. So Amika was always kind of territorial about Magnus, and I think that Atlas was fairly friendly the first times that we'd run into each other in the halls. We'd always have the dogs on leash, and we have to take them out to go to the bathroom or take them for walks or stuff like that. And so Amika would Atlas would get close and she'd growl at him or bark, and sometimes he'd bark at her and all of that. As a matter of fact, I think I remember Atlas when I was just walking Magnus by himself, which I would do sometimes with both of them. I think Atlas came up to him and they wagged their tails and sniffed each other and all of that. So, long story short, for quite a long time, Atlas was just a big shaggy dog that I would see. He was sort of brownish golden, had long hair like this long on his body. It was built kind of like a barrel with a head and tail and legs. And he had kind of a long, almost like collie-like face, so a long snout. So he was a mix of something, who knows what. And he was, nice and smart. Whenever I would run into him without the dogs, he would kind of come up and sniff my hand, and, let me pet him. And anyway, there were these three women that were living next door, and Atlas essentially belonged to all of them, but he belonged to one of them officially. And I don't remember the entire story. I think they'd met each other, some of them in high school and some in college, and then they decided to live in this three-room apartment with each other. I think they were going to Marquette University and then graduated and got jobs. So anyway, long story short, our dogs eventually passed away, each of them at age 14. And after that, I would see Atlas, and I'd pet him and stuff like that. And one day, I was coming back home, I think from teaching. And, I get in the elevator on the first floor, and I go up to the 8th floor. And there's Atlas standing in front of the elevator, no leash. I think he had his collar on. And he's looking real nervous, and then I'm at the elevator, and he gets into the elevator, and I'm like, "What are you doing, boy? Are you all right?" And he's real, nervous, a little agitated, and I was like, "Come on, let's get you home. I don't think you're supposed to be trying to ride the elevator by yourself, because if the elevator had gone down to the first floor and he was still on it, he could have gone out into the lobby, and then from the lobby, if anybody opened the doors, he could have gone outside, no leash, all by himself. He could have gotten easily hit by a car. Who knows what would have happened?" So I was like, "Come on, buddy, let's go see what's going on with your people." So I start walking up the long corridor towards our place, and he's kind of looking around, and he follows me, and he's right alongside me. So we go to his door. So we got to go a little bit further than our apartment, go around the corner, and I try the door. It's locked, and I'm like, well, let's knock. Let's see if there's anybody here, any of your people. And so I knock, nobody answers, and I'm like, well, what should I do? And I was like, well, I got some time on my hands. Maybe they'll come back. I sure can't leave him here, and I'm not just going to take him into my apartment because they won't know where he is then. So I was like, okay, you just stay here, Atlas. And, I petted him a little bit. And he's getting a little bit less nervous because he's by his place. And I was like, he's panting. So I was like, well, I'll go get you some water. Because we still had like the dog's water dish because the cat used it, right? So I go into the apartment. I get one of the water dishes, a big bowl, fill it up. And I go down to the end of the hall. And Atlas is gone. And I'm like, oh, shit, did he go to the elevator again? So I go back into the apartment, put the water there, go downstairs, look for him. He's not down there. And I was like, well, maybe somebody let him in. I don't know what's going on, And a couple months later, maybe just a couple weeks later, I ran into one of the women who was like taking the elevator at the same time as me, and I was like, hey, what was going on with your dog? I found him trying to get on the elevator on the 8th floor, and I brought him back to your apartment and knocked on the door, and then I went to get him some water, and when I came back, he was gone. But obviously I've seen you walking him, so he must be okay, but what happened? And she, said, well, oh yeah, he got out. And it's become a real problem. He's really smart. He's figured out how to open doors. And he gets into our cabinets, and we don't have any privacy in our bedrooms because he's figured out how to open those doors. The only way to keep him from coming in or opening a door is you have to barricade the door. He goes around wherever he wants to. We've created some sort of monster. And I was like, oh, okay, well that tracks. And then I told her the story in more detail about how nervous he was, and it was kind of uncharacteristic for him because he was usually kind of a happy-go-lucky dog, but he seemed really nervous. And now it makes sense, right? He was nervous because he'd known he did something he wasn't supposed to do, and then he couldn't figure out how to undo it. And the only thing he actually knew was elevator goes outside, maybe I'll find my people or something like that, right? Well, at least one of them was in the apartment at the time. So anyway, we're chatting about that, and I was like, well, I'm really glad that he's okay. And they're like, well, we're really glad that you found him, because who knows what the hell he would have gotten into. He might have actually gotten himself hurt or just lost or something like that. And here in Milwaukee, you don't want to have your dogs lost, especially at that time, because there were a lot of problems with dogs being taken by unscrupulous people who would sell them to dog fighting trainers or rings as bait dogs. It was a big problem. I actually had people coming up to me in the park with my big dogs who were asking all sorts of suspicious questions. Dog parks were being staked out and all of that. So you definitely didn't want your dog to be on its own here in the downtown of Milwaukee. So anyway, time passes. We also have, as one of the perks of this apartment complex, there's on the 6th floor, there's a deck where you can see the, the sky and the other buildings, and there's grills and there's furniture and all that. So I would often take our dogs on that deck, and later I'd take Sassy, our cat, as well, and we would sit on the couch together, and they'd look at the sky, watch the seagulls and all that. So I would often be out there myself working on stuff, and the girls come out, the women. Think of them as girls because they were students for much of the time that I knew them. And they've got Atlas with him, and he comes out and he's wagging his tail, and his eyes are happy, and he comes up to me and he's doing the doggy thing. So I'm scratching his ears and petting him and all that. And, we're just kind of chit-chatting. And this happened several times. I would, sit on the couch, and he would actually get up on the couch with me. And he was a big dog. He was probably 80, 90 pounds or so. And he'd, put his head in my lap, and I'd scratch him. Then he'd roll over, and he'd want his belly rubbed, and he'd lick my face and all that. It was kind of nice, And so I got to know these women a little bit. You do the sort of ask them, where are you from, all of that. And then eventually they moved. And before they moved, we had one more time on the deck together with Atlas. Every time he'd see me, he was kind of happy, and he'd want to hang out and get pets. And I guess that was a bit unusual for him. He didn't warm up to everybody that way, from what these women said. And so anyway, we'd hang out. And the very last time, they were telling me about where they were all moving to in the area, who was taking Atlas with them. And, we said our goodbyes, and that was that. But I'll probably always remember Atlas, just the surprise of the elevator doors opening and nobody else is there, just Atlas. And then he trots into the elevator as if, this is a normal thing. And I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to be here, buddy. Let's go back and see where your people are and what the hell is going on. So that was quite an adventure that little shaggy Atlas got to have. I hope he's doing well. He's got to be pretty old by now, I would guess. But he was such a nice dog, and I thought I would share that story with you.